Now, here at the Port of Los Angeles, the U.S. does more business with China than any other country. And when China responded to U.S. tariffs on imports, the USDA gave $12 billion in federal aid to farmers who were hit with declining sales. But why only farmers? Do they need help the most? Kamasi Aaron with the fact check.
Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue says farmers are feeling the most pain from these tariffs. In a statement, he said, quote, "America's hardworking agricultural producers have taken a disproportionate hit when it comes to illegal retaliatory tariffs." Now, we're not getting into whether the tariffs are legal or not, but we asked our partners at PolitiFact to investigate whether the farmers are really the ones suffering the most from these tariffs. They found Perdue's statement to be mostly true. And that's because a farmer's business relies more heavily on exports than our GDP relies on farmers. The USDA says 37% of exports facing tariffs are agricultural, but agricultural goods only make up 10% of our total exports. But it isn't always easy to measure the true impact of a tariff. PolitiFact says that's because no government entity is actually doing that type of analysis. We hear from individual businesses or industries about the effects, but that's just a small segment, and we won't even see some of the major consequences of a trade war for months or perhaps years. I'm Kamasi Aaron for The Race.
All 435 seats in the House are up for grabs this November. But while out campaigning, more and more congressmen and women, they're concerned for their safety. Threats against our representatives going up at an alarming rate. Corey Rangel taking a look at how big of an issue this is and what some representatives are doing to protect themselves.
After nearly being assassinated while at a baseball practice last year, Congressman Steve Scalise found himself the target of another threat this month. Authorities arrested a man for leaving threatening voicemails on Scalise's phone. Investigators say they found 200 rounds of ammunition and books on homemade explosives at the man's home. This week, Scalise spoke to Fox News about the threat.
Hopefully he gets a serious sentence, because you can't allow this kind of threats and violence against people based on their political views.
Arizona Congressman David Schweiker has been in Congress since 2010 and says he and his family are also dealing with a growing number of threats.
And we had more death threats last year in my office, even one towards my little girl, than we ever had in all the other years combined.
The number of threats against members of Congress are skyrocketing. So far this year, there have been more than 1,600 threats of violence against members of the House alone, quickly approaching the nearly 2,000 threats made all of last year. And when you look at the numbers from 2016, you can see how the numbers have soared. For the past 2 years, the committee that oversees security for House members allocated $25,000 to each member for security purposes. That's 435 representatives. Some House members have bought body armor, hired armed security guards, and beefed up security at their offices. We reached out for information on threats made against senators, but the Senate does not release information on threats to its members. For The Race, I'm Corey Rangel.
Well, just a couple of months ago until November, and candidates trying to get your attention, they're getting their political ads ramped up. We're going to be taking a look at the ones that had you talking this week when The Race continues.